enforcement. Thanks, Rocio. Rocio is recording this meeting, and we record these meetings so that we can post them online in case folks aren't able to attend, or if you all kind of learned something that you feel someone else in the community wants to learn about, feel free to share these videos. They're public meetings. Like I was just saying, there's actually new faces in our group, so I actually want to take a moment to quickly introduce the group that we have before we dive in. Hi, everyone. My name's Stephanie, and I'm a program manager in our Community Strategies and Resources Department, which oversees the implementation of AB 617. Super excited to be here, and I just want to thank everyone really quickly for their flexibility. We had the meeting scheduled last month, and we heard from a few folks that they couldn't attend, so we did reschedule. So thanks, everyone, for being flexible. I'll pass actually next to Rocio on my team.
Thanks, Steph. Hi, everyone. My name is Rocio Calderon, and I'm also on the Community Strategies and Resources Department, and I am the Community Liaison for the Stockton AB 617 community. And I'll go ahead and pass it off to Jag.
Hi, my name is Jack Cullen. I'm a senior air quality engineer working from the Modesto office. I will pass on to Samuel.
Hi, everybody. Samuel Palmquist. I'm a senior air quality inspector up here in the north as well, the Modesto office, and thanks for joining.
My name is Nick Pierce. I'm a manager in the Permit Services Group. I'm also in the Modesto office. Yeah, great to see all you.
I'm Michael Hamaguchi. I'm a compliance supervisor out of the Modesto office, and good to be here.
My name's Janice. I am new to the Air District, and I'm the compliance manager in the Northern Region Modesto office.
Let's popcorn over to Margot.
Hi, I'm Margot Prowse. I'm a resident in the AB 617 area for Stockton, longtime resident here, chair of the local Sierra group, and I will pass it to Cynthia.
Thanks, Margot. Cynthia Pinto Cabrera, Policy Associate with Central Valley Air Quality Coalition, working in South Stockton since the beginning of AB 617. And I'll pass it to Mary Elizabeth. Did they go?
Mary Elizabeth, Stockton resident.
And I'll really quickly share. I know Gloria is joining us, but she won't be able to use her mic, so I'll read what she put in the chat. Gloria Alonso, and Gloria is with Little Manila Rising as their Environmental Justice Advocacy Coordinator. Welcome, Gloria. And I'll round it off with our partners over at CARB.
Yeah, thanks, Stephanie. I'll kick it off for us, CARB here. Hey all, I'm Kyle Goff. I work on community air protection incentives at CARB, but I'm also the CARB community liaison for Stockton. I think with that, I'll pass it over to Eric.
Hi, I'm Eric Bissinger. I'm with the Community Outreach and Enforcement section at CARB, the Enforcement Division. Good to see you, everybody.
Thanks, Eric, and thanks everyone for humoring me and introducing yourselves. This is, like I mentioned, it's our 11th meeting, and really each of these meetings has been a deep dive into topics. When we first started this committee, we kind of worked with the group and our co-leads in particular, who are Gloria and then Debbie, who couldn't be here today, have been such great leaders of this group of just helping review the materials, putting together agendas, and helping us line up lots of topics to deep dive into in all of these meetings. This topic, I think it came from a few folks, so just some questions about biomass facilities in particular. There's one biomass facility in our Stockton boundary, which is CTE. And we have discussed this facility before, but I think it was really early on in this committee, in this subcommittee. And so we're just kind of taking the opportunity based on the questions to, again, kind of revisit this facility and understand how they operate and understand kind of what how we do kind of control the emissions at this facility and what they're subject to. In order to do a really successful presentation, you do see a handful of folks because we have two different teams joining us. You heard, we have our permits team joining us and then our compliance team joining us, that they're going to kind of take turns sharing a full picture of kind of the facility overall. And then we have one other person who's joined us. Hi, Everett.
Hello.
Hello. We did quick introductions. Do you want to quickly share your name and kind of your role on the committee?
Everett Johnson, resident, servant of the Most High. Just come in and to be a part and do what I can, while I can. All right. Good to see you all and Happy New Year.
Thanks, Everett. Well, awesome. If there are no questions, we have prepared a presentation to kind of describe, again, the facility, but we are totally open to hearing how folks want to take in this information. If we want to pause for questions, you all feel free to raise your hand, unmute, or pop questions into the chat, and we'll be happy to pause. But I will be happy to pass it over to the team now. And do you all, I think Jag and Sam, I think Rocio is going to help us by sharing her screen. Does that sound good?
Yeah, that's fine.
Perfect. All right, well, I'll pass it over to you all.
So go ahead and the next slide. Okay, so yeah, so we're going to discuss DT Stockton facility. Basically, it's biomass facility. Basically, they take the agricultural waste and combust it in the boiler and generate the electricity from it. The facility is in the AB 617 area near the southeast corner of the Washington Street and the Stork Road. You can kind of see it on the left picture, overview of the map, and then on the right is like a close-up view, aerial view of the facility. Go on to the next slide, please. The facility is it's a 54 megawatt electrical generation facility. Basically, it powers about 40,000 houses. They produce enough electricity. And the main equipment that they have is a boiler, basically, which is fired on agricultural waste, waste material collected from like prunings and other orchard takeouts and stuff like that. And they combust that material into the boiler, generate the steam, and that steam gets injected into the steam turbine, and then the steam turbine rotates and is connected to the shaft, which to the electrical generator. This is how they produce basically electricity. The facility has other units too, like IC engine, but the main unit is the boiler. Um, the emissions from the boiler are basically discharged through different emission control technologies. Um, First, the exhaust from the boiler is injected with trona. Basically, it's a raw form of the sodium carbonate to scrub out the sulfur dioxide and any other acid gases such as HCl and stuff like that. Um, and then that latent gas is passed through what we call it electrostatic precipitator. It's basically kind of a big giant box with electrical charges, and the exhaust stream is passed through it. It gets charged, and the particulate matter, which is basically your trona and other fly ashes, everything, gets attracted onto the plates of the electrostatic precipitator, and it basically captures all the particulate matter, and then the clean um, uh, exhaust is then passed through the SCR system, which is a selective catalytic reduction system, which is for their NOx controls. And from there, the exhaust actually passed um, through the wet scrubber for again to lower the HCl and other sulfur emissions. And so that's what the control techniques are. And this plant is equipped with the best available control technologies that are out there for this kind of facility. they reduce pretty much all the pollutants, such as NOx, PM, sulfur dioxide, and other acid gases that are released from this facility. Go on to the next slide, please.
Jack,
So,
can I stop you for 1 second? We have a
yeah, sure.
couple of questions.
Sure.
One of those questions is, what are the allowed feedstock for the combustion?
Um, so mainly it's a agricultural waste. It's a clean wood residues. Basically anything come from the pruning the orchards and taking out the agricultural orchards, and any kind of clean lumber is also used. The permit basically prohibits the use of any kind of um, uh, if it is laden with other chemicals or if the wood has some sort of like a preservatives and stuff like that, the permit prohibits that. So it's a clean wood that goes into the plant, basically all the clippings and stuff.
Yeah, I'll answer that, Jag. Yeah, they're permitted for biomass. So they have a permit condition that stipulates exactly what they can and cannot burn. But in actuality, they can burn any type of wood mass, organic matter. But in practicality, they're over 90% is coming directly from orchard removals. So it's clean wood mass.
Yeah, thanks, Mike.
I have a question. This is Margot. So is this a free depository for farmers to drop off their debris? How does or
I
how
think
do they get the feedstock?
I think they have contracts with the orchard removal companies, you know, um, and those whenever they remove the old orchards, they um, the stuff gets chipped, and hauled to the facility. I think that's how um, their contracts are set up, but it's not. I don't think it's a Mike. You can correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah,
I don't think it's a drop-off type
they,
facility.
they have orchard removal companies that are selling them their wood mass. So they get a consistent fuel basically. And then they're not taking wood waste from the public as a drop offering like that.
Yeah. So there was another question, I think, from Mary Elizabeth. When was those pollutant reduction technologies installed? So originally the plant was equipped with, uh, I think the plant was installed back in like 2010, somewhere there, 2011
Yeah, I see,
timeframe.
Jag, I see Nick responded to it. So the plant was built around 2011, 2012, and so the
Yeah.
emission control would have been installed when they were built.
Yes.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And then we'll take one other question before we continue on with the presentation. How much biomass do they burn every year?
So the rate is about 470,000 tons per year. They burn about 80 to 81.3 tons per hour.
Awesome. Go ahead and Jag, if you want to continue on.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and we can keep on. You all feel free. I love this. You all feel free to keep popping questions into the chat or raising your hands as you have them.
Okay. Yeah. So just wanted to give you an overview of the permit. The permit, go back to the previous. Yeah. Just wanted to give you an overview on the permit. This facility is subject to about 20 different district and federal regulations, including our rule 4352. Um, the permit has daily emission limits as well as annual emission limits. And also it includes annual testing for each pollutant, and monitoring conditions are there. All the record keeping, we require them. Our inspectors go periodically there uh, to look at their record keeping requirements. Um, as far as the emission testing is on an annual basis, the monitoring is on a continuous basis. We require them to monitor um, different pollutants using continuous type monitor system. Also, they are allowed to, like I said previously, they are allowed to burn only clean wood residues. No treated wood is allowed to burn at this facility. Um, there are emission limits in the permit for all the pollutants. Go ahead and next slide. Um, like I said, regarding the monitoring, they are required to monitor. They have a SIM system, continuous emissions monitoring system, which feeds to um, uh, our polling system. Basically, their SIMs, whatever is reading is we can see it, what's going on with their SIMs on a continuous basis. So it feeds it continuously to the district system. And so they continuously record the NOx, CO, and sulfur dioxide emissions. SIMS for the SOx basically ensures that they are injecting the sodium carbonate or the trona into the into the exhaust on a continuous basis. And similarly, SIMS, there's a COM system, what we call it a continuous opacity monitoring system, which gives us a reading on their visible emissions. Um, uh, this will this ensures us that their electrostatic precipitator, which kind of collects all the dust and everything, um, yeah, is working properly. And we also, on top of that, we also require them to monitor the power that goes into the electrostatic precipitator to make sure that it is optimally operating. Regarding the wet scrubber or the acid scrubber, that's at the end of the kind of a tail there. So we require them to install the pH. We wanted to make sure that the scrubber is using appropriate solution at the correct pH to scrub the acids from the exhaust stream and also the flow. We also require them to um, keep track of the flow rate. It's all to make sure the system is optimally operating. Um, so the facility is kind of closely monitored and also equipped with the best available control technology out there for this kind of operation. Next slide, please. This slide kind of gives you an idea on how the DTE emission compares to the other sources in the AB 617. For NOx, I mean, basically main 42% and 43% off-road. Majority of the NOx emissions are from those two categories in the AB 617 community in Stockton. And VOC and PM 2.5, majority of these emissions are from area-wide sources, such as fireplaces and other road dust and stuff. And next slide. And this gives you the actual numbers from this plant relative to the other emissions in the community, NOx and PM 2.5. The average is about 100 tons per year from this plant and 12 tons of PM 2.5. Do you have any questions? So I'm gonna hand over to Sam. He's gonna explain to you the compliance enforcement part of the plant.
Excellent. Thanks a lot, Jag. So
I'm sorry there, Jay. I put in a couple of questions there that weren't called out for you. So on the on-road and off-road, those are regulated by CARB.
That's correct.
And what does cooking come from? Because that seems to be quite a bit.
Yeah, so the cooking is from like let's say you have a Carl Jr. or any other char broilers and other cooking establishments in the community. So those are the cooking emissions. Um, uh, Basically all the restaurants and other activities associated with the cooking.
Can I ask, are these emissions numbers after they've gone through all this, after it's gone through the scrubber?
Yes.
This is still the leftover after all those technologies are implemented.
Yes, that's correct.
And this is, maybe I'll just add one last caveat. This might look familiar to you all because these are numbers that we've actually been working off of kind of from an emissions inventory exercise that like CARB helped pull all of these values for us together back when we were working on SERP implementation. So I think that like previous slide that you all saw did come from 2018. So it is a couple years off, but there are similar types of activities that are done. For example, for DTE, they are performing the similar types of activities. So that proportion on that emissions inventory chart would be a similar proportion because of those similar types of activities that they're still performing with all of those control technologies that we've already mentioned. So that's a good question. Thanks, Margo.
I have a question. The instruments are the tractors, loaders, or backhoes. What feeds the boilers, and are they diesel or are they electric?
They are actually the conveyors are the one. I mean the stuff is loaded onto the conveyors. I think compliance maybe Sam, if you can answer that question,
Yeah,
As far as I can see only the conveyors there. I think there may be, I'm not sure if it's kind of feeders that are kind of hooked um, into their stockpiles.
Yeah, so they do have a conveyance system, and that's an electric conveyance. But they do have some tractors, diesel equipment that does do the loading. And I'm not sure if they do have a feed for the conveyance, other than some of the pushing that goes on with tractors, loaders, and such.
So and then the same method that it's put in would be the same method that the waste is taken out.
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question. From the boilers?
Yes, after the waste has been emptied. Yeah, after whatever is left over, how does that leave and go to wherever that position is?
Sure. That I will get to that in just a moment. To a degree, there is there's a little bit of fly ash or wet ash that's loaded with loaders, but most of it actually through the electrostatic precipitator is screw augered into a silo. At which point then it's offloaded into a semi trucks that's a byproduct of cement that's sold off from that company to other companies.
So yeah, in addition to that, so basically the fly ash that's in the combustion chamber, it gets entrained and they have cyclones and electrostatic precipitators and everything. So everything gets from there, it basically kind of conveyed into the silos. So the fly ash goes into the silo. The bottom ash, which is kind of it falls into a trough. It's a water trough, and from there, um, it's fully saturated. It gets hard to offsite, basically.
Yeah, thank you, Jack. The bottom ash starting out wet, it gets stored in a bunker for a very temporary amount of time before it's hauled off, as does the fly ash, and that's dry and it goes straight into the silo, where it's then bottom loaded into the bed of a semi truck.
So this is Margot again. So the biomass power plant has 103 tons per year of NOx, which is it seems comparable to all those others, which shocks me when you consider how it goes through all those cleaning processes. Am I wrong to think that that seems awfully high for a plant that goes through all those emission controls? And do you know of other technologies out there that can clean it up even more?
This plant is, I mean, when you look at this plant relative to the other biomass plant, this plant is the cleanest one of all. And it is equipped with the best available control technology for NOx, for particulate matter, for sulfur dioxide, for acids. Um, so this is kind of a one of the, I think this is the only plant that has a SCR system on it, which reduces the NOx emissions. Um, so we have not heard of any other technologies that are being deployed for a similar power plant, other than, um, I mean, some of them, they don't have even the SCR system on it. Um, but this plant does. And the other plants don't have a wet scrubber at the end, which scrubs even uh, more acids and sulfur. That's kind of a residual sulfur dioxide that's left. Um, so this, I would say this is the state of the art plant, basically.
Is there another plant? Where's the next nearest plant? Do you know?
I mean, we used to have it in the Fresno area, Rio Bravo, and
Chowchilla. There's one in Yolo,
Chowchilla.
Woodland. There's a
There's
sister
one
plant
where
in
I can't hear you.
Woodland.
Okay.
There's one down in the Bakersfield area as well. Those are all older plants. And just to reiterate, yeah, this is the newest one, but it also has the most efficient technologies added onto it, control technologies that Jag is describing. So it is the cleanest in the world, basically.
Hi, this is Cynthia with CVAC. I also have a question. I think we were starting to talk a little bit about enforcement, but then we got sidetracked with some questions. I think there was some questions about 2 or 3 CSC meetings ago about some violations that DTE Stockton had in January 2024, and I think it was September 2024. I don't think at least I don't recall having gotten any follow-ups. I think there were some folks on here who had brought those CSC meetings, which is I think why we're having this meeting now. But wondering if there was what was the follow-ups on the January violation. I think that one was that they failed to pass one of their source tests, if I'm correct.
Yeah, and Sam's gonna.
I wonder if we just, Cynthia, your question is perfectly timed because that's literally the other half of the presentation. So Sam, why don't you jump into it?
Sure. And in my presentation?
Yes.
Sounds good. If you'll forward the slide, please. Perfect. So again, hi, I'm Sam. I'm part of the inspection or the compliance team. I'm a senior air quality inspector here. And the compliance inspection schedule is per the SERP, there is a measure. The facility is currently subject to enhanced inspection frequencies due to having an emissions violation within that 3 years prior to the adoption of the SERP. Inspections have occurred every 6 months since the adoption of the SERP, with most recent violations recorded as 511-23, the failed ammonia slip emissions during that source test, which was retested in June and they passed. The other one being failure to conduct an annual source test within the allotted anniversary period of April 16th, 2024. That test was conducted May 30th, 2024, and as I understand, passed. Next slide, please. So what is the compliance inspection process? As an inspector, I go to a facility, or I'll say we because I'm not the only one, but investigating the facility, physically observing the equipment and the processes that occur at the facility, ensuring compliance with the district issued permits to operate, their conditions. Staff inspects various parts of the facility's operation, including the Exhaust Act's continuous emissions monitoring system, SEMS, as Jag had mentioned, to ensure that it's being maintained and operated properly. Part of that inspection process is making sure that everything is hooked up, it's operating, it's in operation and recording. There are calibration gases to test to measure and calibrate against what their stack is reading and what is actually I guess what's happening in reality with those calibration gases. Inspectors review facility records, so they have a whole host of conditions that require them to monitor everything from throughputs to emission levels, and so part of the inspection process is reviewing those and checking them for any violations. The district also has a subgroup within compliance that observes third-party source tests. We do not conduct the source test that's, as mentioned, the third party conducts those. So we see those so that we can make sure that all the tests are being done according to the methods that they're supposed to be using. Next slide, please. So I think it's come up that what's really going on out here? There's a whole lot. And so I apologize, I didn't number the arrows as they're coming through, but I can kind of walk you through how things enter the plant and where they exit, and then a few things that we look at during the inspection process. So on the bottom right-hand part of that picture, there's a big red arrow, and that's, thank you, that's where biomass is entering the plant through conveyance. And that blue section right there is the biomass boiler. And so the biomass is combusted there, and then following that next arrow, excuse me, it's heading towards what we call the dust collector, or referring to it as a dust collector. It is the electrostatic precipitator. So it's taking an electrical charge and causing all those dust particles to stick to plates before they fall down and are transported to the fly ash silo, which we'll get to. But the next arrow, it kind of rounds over there and makes a U-turn heading back, where it eventually is heading towards the scrubber there. And I'm sorry about these arrows. It's a little hard for me to see on my screen, so I hope you guys can see it. But the scrubber is right there, and just after the scrubber is emissions monitoring equipment, the SEM shack, as we kind of colloquially call it. So right there is another inspection point. We're making sure, like I said, calibration gases are good, everything is in order and operating. Followed by that is the stack, and that's kind of the point of attention that everybody has, but that's where everything is leaving from. So that's where all the exhaust gases go. A lot of the things pointed out in green here are things that we can physically inspect. Trona silos, as Jag mentioned, that's part of keeping the SOx emissions down. So there's a collection of silos. There's both Trona silos and fly ash silos. If those are operating during the time of an inspection, we're checking them for differential pressure, and that's to make sure that there's no visible emissions or dust that's coming out of those silos. And then the emissions monitoring equipment, the cooling tower up top, if you see that there, water vapors are coming out of there, and I think that that's a lot of, or a possible point of confusion for people thinking that it might be smoke. They do have tests that they conduct on the water source there to make sure that there's not particulate matter coming out of those. In the years that I've inspected, there haven't been any issues with the water quality. And they do have an internal combustion engine powering a generator there. And that is a backup generator. If the plant loses power, they can power some critical infrastructure. You know, their office equipment and control room operation, I think, can be sustained by that in order to get shut down. And then obviously on the left there is the office. kind of a quick rundown there. And if you'll change the slide, please. So I mentioned that there are a lot of conditions and there's a lot of reporting that happens there. So what is required? This facility is required to submit various reports to fulfill district and federal environmental protection agency requirements. Some of these reports are submitted annually, some are biannually, and some are quarterly. Inspectors review these reports for correctness, completeness, and if there's a non-compliance that's documented, appropriate enforcement actions are taken by the district. As part of being a Title V facility, which is federally enforceable rules and permits, the facility must self-report any deviations from these federally enforceable permit conditions to the district as soon as possible. But there's a stipulation that that report must not come in any later than 10 days after it's discovered. The facility must submit this deviation report describing the event, the duration of non-compliance, when it was discovered, when compliance was achieved, the probable cause, and any measures taken to correct and prevent future occurrences. Next slide, please. I've also mentioned source testing. So what's that about? To ensure compliance, the biomass-fired boiler is tested annually to ensure compliance with permit limits of PM10, NOx, CO, VOCs, SOx, and NH3. These tests, as I also mentioned, are performed by CARB-certified third-party contractors, and they are using approved methods that are approved by CARB. So the district has staff that are trained to observe these third-party source tests and to review the test results. Their most recent source test was conducted May 30th, 2024, with passing results. And that's what I have on the compliance end. I think if we have any questions, we can take them, of course.
Sam, I just want to point out, I think Cynthia might have brought it up. They did have the last two violations. It was January and I think May, June time. So the one last January was for a failed source test, and that was for ammonia slip. So they were introducing excess ammonia in their system to reduce NOx. So they got a violation for that, and they had to retest, and they passed. And then in May, they actually had some. They were in an outage, and they had some equipment failure, so they weren't running, and they tested late. Even though they weren't running, we were still supposed to test on an annual basis, and they were 30 days late, greater than 30 days late. So they got a violation for that. So that there was no emission violation for that last violation, but they just tested late and passed. I just want to. Since we had those on the slide, I want to mention that.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. And sometimes part of that outage is there's during spring, they will shut down the plant for sometimes I think 2 weeks, and they're kind of going through the plant to do any critical infrastructure repairs and things of that nature while the plant's down. They kind of have an all hands on deck approach to that. So if I recall, that was during that time.
I think I should have said the plant maintenance, the annual plant maintenance delayed their testing and they got that last violation. That's correct.
Thanks, Mike. That's super helpful, the context. I myself even find myself looking sometimes at the violations, wanting to know a little bit more because, sometimes the details it's hard to know exactly just in that short description. So I appreciate the detail. And Cynthia, if that didn't answer your question, let us know if you have any additional follow-up ones. But that was the slide deck that we wanted to bring that kind of ties together both sides of kind of the permitting side, what they're permitted to do, what for their operations, and then also how we on the other side of it kind of enforce those rules and regulations and kind of follow up to make sure that they're following all of our, again, rules and regulations. And I just wanted to pause here. That was, again, our presentation. So if folks have any questions, now is the perfect time. I think we've answered everything. Oh, no, we have some additional questions in the chat, actually. Mary has 2 questions. What about opacity testing? Can we talk a little bit about opacity testing? And Mary, is your question, what is public information about the opacity testing or just in general?
No, I put in a PRA for about those violations that you were all talking about, and I never got any response. So, that's there's that. I got something on the dispenser that you found a problem with that the operator claims was just one person and it had nothing to do with their operation. So I followed up. We haven't seen a enforcement. We don't have any enforcement records since June 30 of 2024 posted.
Yes, and thank you, Mary, because I know you did bring that up in the meeting. So we're working with our team. Our team is pulling the data for Q3 and Q4 right now. So those should be available really soon here.
Okay, and then I put in two pictures in there. One was a picture from the Ports 2022 emission inventory, which is showing their marine sources quite different. And so I'm just wondering, as you all permit these places for a maximum amount, which I found out through the Lehigh and now Nevada Cement Company, well over what they actually are saying that they do. So I think at 2018, is there a plan to do another emission inventory before we're through with this process? Because now we're looking at 7 years and just comparing that marine data that the port came up with and the marine data that you have listed in that presentation, there's quite a bit of difference. The other picture that I put there was a picture when I was actually observing the odor, and you'll notice that there's a emissions coming from the front end, like it's slipping out of a process. So I just, want to have a say about that. And, when we see black smoke, and it's really disheartening that there's not any visual, right? I mean, I thought that opacity test, because that's we do the opacity test. And so, okay, I'll research, you send me a link, somebody sent me a link, to the EPA opacity test methodology that I read through, and then I asked, well, like who's doing the opacity testing that seems to be required as part of this permit to verify, in fact, that those emission plumes that we're seeing, pass the opacity standard.
I can answer that. I can answer all that. So just to address the opacity monitor that they have inside the stack. It's a laser beam that goes through a daily calibration to make sure that it's accurate. And then part of the annual testing, as Sam and Jag mentioned, they challenge that monitor to make sure that it is operating to standards. And then
Is
to
it
address
third-party tested, verified? Is that part of the third party?
Third party testing.
And
absolutely.
how do they do that testing? How do they do that challenge?
It's something called a relative accuracy test. They normally do 11 or 12 1-hour runs, and then each of those need to be within plus or minus % of what the machine is getting, basically. So they challenge the system. It's electronically, but to make sure that it's functioning properly. But then the system itself does a daily calibration, and we monitor, Sam and I, our compliance group, we monitor that information because we get that on a daily basis if they have any problems with that system.
I think we had, I think it was Volkswagen, was doing some of their own, internal monitoring of their emissions. I think we got a lot of money on that. And I'm just wondering, is this public information?
The testing information is public information.
And who the third party investigator is?
Oh, the testing company? I'm not sure. We can get that information for you. But we only allow certified technicians, I'll call them, to do this testing. They're very specialized companies. So and then we review the source tests to make sure that everything matches up. They're doing the right processes from the front end to data collection to the processing. So all that gets reviewed by our staff.
This is Stephanie, because Mary, you said something earlier I wanted to circle back to. I know that our director of compliance had been trying to get in touch with you to ask some questions about a PR that you had. So I can check back in with our team to see if there's anything outstanding. Sometimes when things get submitted to us, we may have to follow up with some additional questions to help clarify and make sure we're pulling the right data. So it may be that they just have some follow-up questions for you about that PR.
Yeah, thank you. I was pretty clear in my follow-up correspondence as well. You had a question here. This came from the Port of Stockton. This is for 2022. So it's not 2018, it's 2022 data. And I believe that is in tons. Whether or not it's English tons or metric tons, I couldn't say offhand. But I believe that somebody from your office was at the outreach meeting when this was presented. So you should have all also received the full emissions inventory.
Thanks for clarifying. And you also asked a question about whether or not we worked kind of a while back with CARB to kind of put together the area-wide sources. That's something that we'd have to work with CARB on if that's something we'd want to redo. I don't know, Kyle, if you have any thoughts, or maybe it's something that I know it's not your team and something maybe we can take back to your, the team that works on it. But that's something that, is done in collaboration with CARB that we can check in with them about.
And I guess we just have one more picture there.
Oh, the picture of the site?
The side, yeah, the side where this is in the front of the building.
Yeah, I'm
there.
sorry. I meant to address that. I've got it open on my screen, but basically, yeah, it looks like there's they have multiple points along the process of the big boiler area where they have the ability to let off steam from certain points. From what I'm seeing in that picture, that's not a visible emission. That's steam. But there's a lot of hot water going through that system, and a lot of times there are many pressure relief valves basically to make sure that the pressure is consistent and going through the process properly, and that happens on a regular basis. But as Sam mentioned, as during the compliance inspection, yeah. We are I'll say monitoring that, but we're inspecting the whole site. So those types of things do happen, and it's not a permit violation.
So you shouldn't be smelling anything though, should you? If it's just steam. Water doesn't have a scent.
But I mean that's part of our inspection. It's sight, sound, smell. And
well, you weren't out there. You weren't out there, when I was out there and I took this picture. So that's like when was the last time you guys were out there?
I was there just last month, inspecting a facility right next to it. So, but it's right there. It's literally standing right behind that. But no, that's all that's part of the inspection. Like I said, it's sight, sound, smell. Those are our things that we're doing on the ground. But in my opinion, that looks like steam. But as far as yeah, if you ever witness that or experience something out there, if you're out there, yeah, just call in as a complaint, and the chances of us being able to get out there very quickly is highly likely. We usually have staff in the area doing inspections on a daily basis.
Thanks, Mike. And I see two other hands, but maybe so I don't lose the thread of what Mary and Mike were just talking about is if you have you see an air quality complaint or something that you're worried about in the community, report it to us. We have inspectors that are on call and Mike, like Mike is saying, we're out in the community kind of regularly doing these inspections. And so if you have a complaint, you can either call it into us, you can submit it to our website, you can submit it via our app. You can do it anonymously if you'd like as well. And if you provide your information, that just means that the inspector will follow up with you and you can kind of hear about the case afterwards about their follow-up. But we highly encourage you if you see something in the community, you all are on the ground. If you see something, let us know and we'll go out and inspect it. And if you have any questions about that process, let us know.
Sam, I see you.
Mary, your question, the no one is doing visible opacity testing. I wouldn't say that that's completely accurate. We are certainly looking at that stack. That's a big point of, everybody can see that. And I myself am in the port quite regularly, and kind of your eyes kind of drawn right to that. During inspections, absolutely, I'm taking a look at that. Even when I'm in the area, I'm taking a look at that stack. And in the 6 years that I've been in that area doing it, I've been taking a look at it. I haven't seen any visible emissions coming out of it.
Yeah, and I'll just reiterate, and whenever we do have staff in the area, whether they're doing the facility inspection at DTE Stockton or just in the area, we have eyes. You can't miss it, like Sam says. We're always looking.
Thanks, team. Go ahead, Cynthia.
Thanks, Cynthia. With CVAC, just had a quick question. So it looks like, based on what Michael and Samuel were saying, sounds like there was 2 years where DTE has not passed one of its inspections due to some high levels of ammonia. I'm just kind of wondering if there's been steps that have been taken to address that, to prevent that from happening next inspection. Yeah, I think ammonia is definitely a source of concern, for the NOx purposes. It's a precursor for PM 2.5, especially now that we have even the 9 microgram standard. We definitely need to address any of these leaks as much as possible. So wondering what steps Valley Air has recommended DT Stockton take, and how they're being held accountable to take those next steps.
Well, yeah, if they fail, I'm not aware of the previous tests if they haven't passed them, but through the research for this presentation, for the last test that they did fail, it was an ammonia slip thing. So they're introducing anhydrous ammonia inside of the through a catalyst bed, basically, and they are effectively trying to knock out the NOx that's generated from the burning of the wood waste. And then it's a titration type of thing. So they're really trying to monitor that system. And that's part of why we do the annual emissions testing, is to make sure that system is functioning as efficiently as possible. And when we're talking yes, they failed a source test, but the amount that they went over was very small. Yeah, I mean, just a hair over. So it's a very fine line, and we hold them to it. It's very hard for them to comply. But as part of the settlement process, when we go through the violation process, they're very much aware that they need to try and do as best a job as they can to stay in compliance. And that's why we do these inspections. That's why we make them do the annual testing to make sure that they are within the limits. I hope that answers your question.
Thanks, everyone. I appreciate all the questions and all the engagement. I see we're getting pretty close to time here. I'm happy to take any other questions that folks have. Our team is obviously here to answer any of your questions, even outside of this meeting. You all now know and are connected to this team. I know that a lot of folks have reached out to like Mike and Nick's team before, but our team is always here to answer any questions that you have. Oh, I do see another question. So go ahead, Gloria.
Yeah, I was wondering how open the team that conducts the inspections is to welcoming community members to just see and witness what happens when these inspections are occurring. It will be really interesting to see what you guys bring out there and just like see in real time how the process actually happens from the beginning to the end of an inspection. And then a side question. I can't remember if this was actually answered already in some past meetings, but does the facility receive a notice for when they will be receiving an inspection? Like, do they expect it? I'm sorry if it was answered already. I just can't remember. Thank you.
No, I'll answer. That's good, really good question. Other than the scheduled source test, which typically we show up for and monitor the source test company that's doing the testing, no, it's we do unannounced inspections. Although I will say that they probably expect us every 6 months because they're on that frequency. But we never show up on the same day. Hope that answers your question.
And Gloria, maybe to your point, I mean, team, feel free to also jump in, but I think this has been a question, and I totally understand it's an interesting topic to kind of dive into. I think for a lot of safety reasons, we just have our district staff do those inspections. I think it's a lot of, there's a lot of dangers and hazards that our team has a lot of specific training for to be able to do the inspections. And then also, I think facilities are pretty specific. A lot of facilities are pretty specific about who they allow into their areas. So for a lot of those reasons, I think it makes it difficult to bring in just kind of outside folks to facilities for these inspections. But I will say if folks are interested in like learning more about our inspection process, we did a really high level kind of walkthrough. If that's of interest to folks, we can do a little bit more of a deep dive of like what an inspection looks like here in the meeting. But I think just, yeah, for a lot of, I think, safety reasons and also just for the safety of the person that's going and also for the facility, it really is just district staff that goes on those inspections.
Yeah, and I'll just reiterate that, even our staff, we have to check in at an office. Generally, there's like a safety check. And to be, we usually have to watch a presentation on their safety protocols to make sure that we're aware of the dangers on site. It is a power plant. There are a lot of very hot things, and then, like Sam mentioned during his inspection overview, there is moving equipment, there's vehicles. Yeah, it is a hazardous environment basically for the workers. And then for our own safety. But yeah, like Stephanie said, we'd be happy to put a more detailed presentation together if the committee wants it for the inspection process. Not a problem.
Awesome. Well, I see it's 5 now. I want to be mindful of time. I know it's the evening and folks are probably wanting to wrap things up for the evening. So I just wanted to thank everyone for joining us today. Something that we didn't quite get to that I maybe will just put out to the whole group and we can send like a follow-up email about it is soliciting topics for our next meeting. I know that Gloria and then also Debbie, but then also lots of folks on this call have supported kind of the meetings and the agenda setting. So if anyone has a topic that they'd like to see in our next meeting, it could be something that we've already covered that maybe you want to hear more about, or it could be a fully new topic that you want to hear about. Let us know. I know that we've kind of bounced back and forth between things that are kind of under the district's jurisdiction and then also CARB's jurisdiction. So all topics kind of are on the table that we can help support. So you all let us know if there's any topics of interest for the next meeting. Mike, do you have?
Oh, I just Mary Liz has a question down at the bottom there.
Yeah, please.
With another photo, and And yes, in my professional opinion, I think Sam will back me up on this. That plume that you're seeing there is steam. Maybe we didn't do a good enough deep dive into what's coming out of that stack. But the scrubber, the wet scrubber, the acid scrubber that Jag and Sam detailed before, it's a very high porous environment with a caustic scrubber, trying to reduce the acid coming out of that stack. And the air going into that stack, so it's like about a 9-foot wide diameter tube going into the scrubber that's at the base of the stack. And the temperature going into that's nearly 400 degrees, 375, 380 degrees. So you end up with a very high amount of water evaporation, and that's what that plume is. And I see you got another question about the chip biomass. Yes, they have a whole separate level of permitting for the wood waste. They do some chipping on site, and then to size the pieces of wood and make sure it's consistent. But they do have a whole set of dust control requirements, basically, not to get too into the weeds. That is part of our inspection process. Today, we focused on the business side, basically. But yes, they have a whole set of conditions for controlling the dust and monitoring the dust. And that is part of our inspection process.
And just to note, there is another facility adjacent to, but on the same side as the power plant that is not DTE, that also does green waste.
Yep.
And that's
not part of the facility.
I can't think of the name offhand, but anyway.
Yeah.
Well, is that facility also biomass? Is that what you're
No,
burning it?
they're taking a municipal waste, chipping it, and basically turning it into compost. But none of that ever goes to the facility. But it is right in front of the facility. Yeah.
Thank you.
Good question.
Oh, great questions. Awesome. Like I said, if you all have any other questions, our whole team is here to answer any questions. You can feel free to reach out to us via email and via phone. Maybe Sam and Mike, do you mind, and Jag, maybe if you can pop your contact info into the chat for folks, that would be helpful. And you all should feel welcome to reach out to any of them for information. Appreciate all the great questions. And like I mentioned earlier, if you all have any other topics you'd like to see next meeting, please let us know. It sounds like maybe folks are interested in getting more detail on our inspection process, which is definitely something we can work with our compliance team to put together, but totally open to hearing other topics for our next meeting. But yeah, thank you all so much for coming this afternoon, and thanks team for presenting. Mike's email is in the chat. I think, yep, Jags is there, and then Sam, if you want to pop yours in too. Feel free to reach out with us with anything, but thank you all for joining us today, and we'll see you all soon.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Have a good evening. Be safe.
Bye, Everett. Bye, Margot. Thank you.